Well, good evening, everybody. This is Jeff Morton, your host for Let's Talk About It. And we were not able to broadcast last week because I was in the emergency room with my wife. She's doing fine, but just a bunch of stuff happened. So I wasn't able to do what we're going to do tonight. But I'm really appreciative that you are joining us. We're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube. Hopefully, we're live on Rumble. Yeah, we are live on Rumble. I can see that. And maybe one day we'll get a little bit more live stream stuff savvy on all of this. But I really appreciate you coming on board and taking the time to take a peek. The shows are all archived. They're going to be on my website, freefromfear.us. Everything's posted there, and just shortly after we do everything. But tonight we're going to do something that goes against everything that I have ever thought when it comes to dieting. I'm not a big dieter. I learned a whole bunch about plants and herbs and things that are wonderful. And then my engineer, Carol, who I've known for a long time, he is, he's lost literally a whole person. I said, "You look fantastic. How did you do that?" And he said, "Well, he went to the carnivore diet." Well, I'd never heard of the carnivore diet. So we started talking about it, and I was like, okay, that goes against everything I've ever understood. But anyway, he introduced me to a gentleman by the name of Jim Ramm, who is my guest this evening. And I want to read a little bit about Jim before we get started. And I got to tell you, I didn't do any research on him because I wanted to have I didn't want to have a biased opinion about everything we're going to talk about tonight. So I didn't do anything to see who he was, what he was talking about, and just literally went by Carol's Carol Gleason. He really highly recommended that I get to know who this gentleman was. But anyway, let me read a little bit about Mr. Ramm. It says here that he is a former, well, let's see, a fellow radio show host, Sergeant Jim Ramm, a retired police officer, a former U.S. Marine, right on, and host of Your DIY Health, which airs every Tuesday and Thursday morning from 10 a.m., noon Eastern, and Monday through whatever, I don't know what that says, Monday through Thursday from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Links are on the radio show tab of yourdyihealth.com. Jim has built a successful longevity supplement business with distributors and customers in all 50 states and multiple countries. He was always looking for things to help his listeners restore their health naturally. And today we will be discussing something he recently learned about that has helped many lose weight. God, I'm butchering this. Anyway, we're going to be talking about the carnivore diet, which he affectionately refers to as the nutrivore diet. So, Jim, thank you for joining. Let's talk about it. And we're going to do a lot of talking about it tonight because I have no idea what any of this means. But I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and explain to the audience and me what this means. Welcome to the show.
Almost forgot to unmute myself. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. It's great to be here, and I want to thank Carol for the recommendation. We've known each other for I guess maybe 3 or 4 years. We chat back and forth. We've never met personally. One of these days, I'm going to get a chance to meet him and hug his neck and all that good stuff. But yeah, it's this is an interesting topic, and I have to give a little bit of history before I get into this to give you an idea why I'm calling this the nutrivore diet. Like I said, I was a police officer in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio for 16 years. I retired in 1996. And when I retired, I was 175 pounds in really good physical shape, running 3 or 4 miles a day, riding. I started bicycle patrol at the police department, all that kind of stuff. And by, what was it, 2010, I was up to 240 pounds. So I had grown a whole new person just about, and had all kinds of health issues. When I was on the police department, I started out with a gastric reflux, or heartburn, as most people would call it. And the doctors have that totally backwards. They'll tell you that you're making too much stomach acid, which is 100% wrong. You're actually not making enough. And I was on, the proton pump inhibitors and junk like that, which basically stop you from making any stomach acid just about, so you can't digest nutrients, especially minerals. And that opens the door to a raft over 900 chronic health issues that you can then start getting, which is good money for the doctors, but not so great for you. And over the next several years, I developed arthritis. Both my knees were bone on bone. I had AFib. My heart felt like it was jumping around like the gymnast trying out for the Olympic team. Like I said, I gained 70 pounds, and I couldn't sleep worth beans. I had sciatica, sensitive teeth, floaters in the eyes, you name it. I just had a boatload. The short list is on my website under the Who Am I tab. And basically I found out about a guy named Dr. Joel Wallach, who is the founder of Longevity. And he literally wrote the book on nutrition, which is in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. And I got on his protocols. I stopped taking the Prilosec the same day. I'll never forget. It was April 22nd of 2012, coming up on my 12-year anniversary. And within 30 days, all the problems I had were gone. My blood pressure, I forgot to mention that, it was 185 over 120 for like 5 years. And I was doing everything the doctors told me. I did not want to take drugs. I was eating whole grains and exercising, which is a fool's errand. And it just got worse. And both my knees were bone on bone. My wife is an orthopedic nurse and does total hip and knee replacements. And for about 5 years, she was telling me, you need to get those fixed, which means, get new knees. I said, I'm sticking with what God gave me. I'll find a way to fix them. Well, everything. Over 30 days time, my blood pressure went to 99 over 77. Haven't had a problem since. The heartburn was gone. Gastric reflux was gone. The AFib stopped jumping around, went back to normal. And it only took 90 days to rebuild both my knees. So I could go up and down stairs again 2 at a time, throw away my cane. And over the next year or so, I dropped 70 pounds without doing any exercise whatsoever. Got back to my retirement weight. Well, time goes on, and I start doing the longevity business because it helped me so well that I started marketing to other people and started my radio show so I could help other people do the same thing I did. And a while back, it was like October of last year, a buddy of mine told me about the carnivore diet, and I had never heard of it. I had heard of like the ketogenic diet, and I'd heard, of course, veganism and vegetarianism and that kind of stuff. And I've always been a meat eater, as has pretty much all of the human race. And that's one of the things that we're going to get into is a little that I've never heard anybody else in the carnivore realm talk about. This is pretty much the lifestyle and eating program of the vast majority of the world, and literally the 28 longest lived groups of people on the planet who normally live anywhere from 120 to 160 years old with no health issues. They have no access to medicine, doctors, hospitals, anything like that. And oddly enough, just because of where they live and what they do the carnivore diet, or what I would call the nutrivore diet, which is nutrition that is plugged into the actual food. Because one of the things that Dr. Wallach found in his research is the human body, while virtually every vertebrate requires 90 essential nutrients, 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, and 2 essential fatty acids every single day in order to stay healthy. And if you haven't been taking those things, you have never been healthy. You've only been symptom free, and there is a big difference. And the 2/3 of that is minerals. And the only place minerals come from is the soil. It's taken up by plants through photosynthesis. It's changed into a form that we are designed to digest. And we either eat the plants or we eat animals that ate those plants, and we get our nutrients that way. The problem is all the farmland, especially in this country, has been depleted of nutritional minerals since the early 1900s. 1936, Senate Document 264 came out that said all the farmland is depleted. And farmers don't put it back in because it costs money and they don't get paid for it. They get paid on yield, tons and bushels per acre. not the nutrient content of the food they're raising. Therefore, you're getting nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and maybe whatever else happens to be in that particular field. And that can vary from row to row to row. Nutrients don't occur in a uniform blanket over the crust of the earth. It's more like veins, like chocolate and chocolate ripple ice cream. And unless that plant dips its little roots down into a vein of a certain type of mineral, whether it's selenium or copper or even arsenic, which, believe it or not, is an essential nutrient, those things don't get taken up into the plants, and you're not going to do very well. And one of the big misconceptions, and this is true of virtually any proponent of any eating style, diet, whatever you want to call it, whether it's veganism, vegetarianism, carnivore, ketogenic, you name it, they all tend to believe that you can get everything you need from eating the foods that they recommend in that diet plan, whatever it is. And unfortunately, it's a flat out lie. It's impossible. The only way to get the 90 essential nutrients is to supplement. And even if you could get the stuff in the foods, you don't know exactly what you're getting, because those foods, unless you analyze every mouthful, you don't know exactly what's in them. So the smart thing to do is to find a source of those 90 essential nutrients that you can easily get and take. And then whatever you get from your food is just icing on the cake. To me, that's the smart way of doing things. That's what I've done for the last 10 or 12 years now. And I'm 66 years old. I don't take any medications whatsoever. Healthy as all get out. I sleep well. My thought process, it was amazing tonight. I just came home from church, and the pastor asked to pray for one of our guys, and he couldn't remember what the condition was he had. And he said, Brother Jim, what's that guy? What's he got? And I said, dermatomyositis. Right off the top of my head, didn't have to think about it, didn't have to do anything, just boom, it came to me. Most people 66 years old would have to think for a while to come up with that term. And it was just right on the tip of my tongue, came right out with no problem. So those are the kind of things, the mental recall, all that kind of stuff is, something I'm happy with. The other thing is, most of the guys I know my age, and I look around when I go places, I find very few people my age that have a flat stomach. I used to have a belly that, Dunlop's disease. I knew I had feet, but I hadn't seen them in a decade or two. And in 2012, when I started this process, I stopped eating grains. And in 45 days, I could see my belt buckle again. And to this day, if my shirt's tucked in, I can still see my belt buckle. I don't have anything hanging over it, anything like that. And that's also very unusual for someone my age. I don't spend hours and hours at the gym. As a matter of fact, I've been trying to get out and just start walking more, just to get some extra activity. But the thing is, a lifestyle or a meal plan that includes those nutrients is number one. That's the first thing, regardless of what you eat. If you supplement first, you're going to do much, much better. And that's the beauty of what Dr. Wallach and his research proved. And he's the only person I'm aware of that has put together a protocol or a product line that has all those things in plant-derived form, easy to use, that kind of stuff. So what I have done is taken the carnivore plan, which is eating nothing but animal products. That's, in a nutshell, that's what it is. You cut out all carbohydrates, and the big thing is forms of sugar. And if it comes from an animal, it's fair game. If it doesn't, then avoid it. The only exception I make to that, and what a lot of people do, is fermented vegetables like kimchi, what's the other one? Sauerkraut, things like that, because they're low glycemic, and they also have stuff that's good for your gut, your digestion system, and that kind of thing. So I'll routinely, like this evening, I had some smoked sausage, some cottage cheese, and some what did I just say? There was my recall.
Well, I mean, you were talking about sauerkraut.
Yeah, so that's basically what I have for dinner tonight. And I gave Carol some pictures that, if he wants to flash them from time to time of some of the things. I eat a lot of bacon, and bacon, probably about a half a pound to a pound a day on average. On the left there is about a 10-ounce hamburger patty, cooked medium, 3 eggs that are just cooked slow and low in butter, and then half a pound of bacon. The next one is a steak and a dozen butter and garlic shrimp and a half a pound of bacon. And that's basically what I eat. That's my entire food input for the day. I eat once a day, usually between 5 and 7 o'clock. And so I was doing intermittent fasting before it was a thing. I've been doing this for the last 12 years, basically, since I started this program of nutrition. When you're nutrified, you don't get hungry. When you have those 90 essential nutrients, it makes it very easy to go 23 hours easily, eat something, and you're good for the next 23 hours. It gives you a lot more time to do other things, which I really like. But one of the big thing in the history of it is, if you go back to those countries that I mentioned earlier, not countries, but cultures, there's 28 of them around the world that, just because of where they live, where they're located, primarily in the upper mountainous areas like Azerbaijan, Lake Titicaca in Peru, places like that. They're above the tree line in many cases. They have a very, very short growing season, so you can't grow most of the things that people are used to eating in vegetation-wise. And as a result, the primary food that they eat is lamb, pork, beef, chicken, and then, of course, eggs, poultry, butter, things like that. And it also happens that most of the time they're in an area where there are glaciers. And the glacial runoff, which they call it glacial milk, it's a grayish looking water that has a bunch of ground up minerals in it that were part of in the glacier. And as the glacier moves and melts, that water runoff is loaded with nutrition. And then on top of that, they take their wood ashes from their cooking fires and they put it in their gardens for whatever they can grow. Those things pick up, because wood ashes is nothing more than minerals that are left behind when you burn away the carbon from the wood. And that's something that human cultures have been doing for eons. And that all came to a screeching halt back around the 1930s and 40s, when everybody got modern kitchens with electric stoves or gas stoves, because there's no wood ashes left behind when you cook them with wood or gas or electricity or gas. But that seemed to be the thing that most of these cultures, it was handed down from time to time to time, that when you have a cooking fire, you have ashes, you put those in the garden. And as a result, people are getting very nutrient rich diets along with the fats and proteins, and very little carbohydrates. There was also some studies done in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where they were looking at lab rats. And if you like, I've got about a 10-minute audio tape of Dr. Wallach. I've edited down, and this is about as short as I could get it. But he talks about some of this history, some of the study with these rats, and then a few examples of people with long lives. If you want, I can play that. And if it gets to be too tedious or whatever, just give me a heads up and we'll stop it. Let me get my file here. But this is Dr. Joel Wallach, and he's talking about the history of nutrition and the way people eat.
I wrote a big textbook of my own, big 1,000-page textbook, trying to educate medical students. Was not very successful at that, and it was very obvious nothing was going to happen. So I went back to school and became a physician. In 1978, began to use these veterinary nutritional formulas in my human patients. And one of the things I wanted to do special for my patients was to get them to live to be an average of 100 instead of 75. So I began to collect information on what it takes to live to be 100 instead of 75. And it's very interesting. A certain percentage of my patients back then in 1978 would say things like, I don't think I want to live to be 100. I said, well, why wouldn't you want to live to be 100? Well, I don't want to wind up in a nursing home and be abused. And I thought that was kind of reasonable concern. So I began to collect information on 100-year-olds that would satisfy me that I was doing the right thing to help my patients live to be 100. And I looked for an animal model. Being a veterinarian and a pathologist, I looked for an animal model first. And I ran into, doing some research, I ran into some stuff that was published in the 1860s, 1863. One was written by William Banting, on how to cure corpulence. Corpulence is an old-timey word for obesity, and this was back in 1863. He talked about a low-carb diet, kind of like the Atkins diet. Maybe it should be the Banting diet, instead of the Atkins diet. And then in 1935, a guy who had been doing all his research in the 1920s by the name of Clive McKay came out with his landmark article in 1935. And what he did was essentially take three groups of rats. Group number one, he gave the rat pellet of the day, and these rats lived to be an average of 2 years, which is really super, because prior to this rat pellet coming out with all of the nutritional knowledge of the time, people who were using rats and mice and rabbits for research would give them rolled oats and carrots and cabbage and things like that. And they might live to be 11 months after weaning instead of 2 years. So it was really good to have a laboratory animal and a food that you could give them that routinely allowed them to live to be 2. He then took the second group, gave them the same basic pellet as group number one, but he cut the carbohydrate calories by 30%, kept the vitamins and minerals the same, and they lived to be 50% older, 3 years. Got kind of excited about that. Took group number three, cut the carbohydrate calories from group number one by 60%, kept the vitamins and minerals the same, and they lived twice as long. They lived to be 4 years of age, and they really got excited about cutting this carbohydrate calories thing. But it wasn't just that. When they redid the studies with spiders and beetles and worms and pigeons and all kinds of animals, they found out that it was the density of the vitamins and minerals per remaining carbohydrate calorie. That was the basic reason, because he had always kept the vitamins and minerals the same when he dropped the calories. He didn't just drop the percentage of food, he dropped only the carbohydrate calories, keeping everything else the same. So in group number three, there was like 3 times more vitamins and minerals per carbohydrate calorie than there was in group number one. Now that I had an animal model and had some idea what to do, I began to look for a human model, and I ran into a guy by the name of Art Linkletter. How many of you heard of Art Linkletter? Great guy. He was funny. He and Jack Benny and Red Skelton and Milton Berle all in the same group. They could tell funny stories without saying dirty words and things, and great family comedians. And Art Linkletter wanted to live to be 100 because he read this book. It was a Pulitzer Prize-winning book published in 1933 called Lost Horizon. It was written by James Hilton. And in this book, Lost Horizon, James Hilton coined the term Shangri-La. How many of you heard of Shangri-La? Okay, well, that's where that came from, that book. And Art Linkletter got real excited about living to be 100. Well, the book was actually written about a people called the Hunza. Okay, well, the Hunzas come from northeast of Pakistan, and they're a third world country, obviously. And Art Linkletter hired an eye doctor by the name of Alan Bannock. And this eye doctor was kind of an amateur farmer, and Art Linkletter funded him to go there for 6 months during the growing season and find out what their secret was to live to be 100. And it was very obvious from reading the book that Alan Bannock had not read Clive McKay's material on his rats. And he was just making lots of observations, didn't give his opinion what was important, but he was a very good observer. And one of the things he found out, these people were third world country. They had no electricity, no indoor plumbing, no hospitals, no pharmacies, no clinics, no doctors. They just used home remedies like herbs and massage therapy and that sort of thing. Yet they were the healthiest and longest lived people on earth. They came from a little mountain range, a little known mountain range by the name of the Karakoram Mountains, about 800 miles east of the Himalayas. Oftentimes people say they're from the Himalayas, but they're from the Karakoram Mountains. And one of the things Dr. Bannock observed was that they would irrigate with water that was kind of gray and opaque. It had lots of silt in it from the glacier grinding up the mountain rocks. And they would irrigate with this glacial water full of this rock silt, this finely ground up rock silt, about the same particle size as talc. And it contained over 60 minerals. And they would irrigate with this. And as the water percolated down into their fields and their gardens, it left a ½ inch to 1 inch of this gray silt on top of the soil. And before it dried, they would run out with their hoes and rakes, and they would hoe and rake the silt down into the soil before it blew away. Now, these people lived at the 19,500 foot level. Now, at 19,500 feet, you can't grow corn and potatoes and rice. They could grow wheat and rye and barley, but because of the very short growing season, their yields were very, very tiny. Their only carbohydrate they ate during the day was a little tortilla, 1 tortilla a day. That was it. No other carbohydrate. The majority of their food was a goat and lamb and mutton and camel and yak and rabbits, and they'd get some wild sheep and goats in the area. They'd eat chickens and eggs. They didn't have fish in those areas. They were too high up for fish. And they cooked in butter. They used milk and cheese and yogurt. They could store dairy protein as cheese and yogurt. They had a little garden. They grow a little bit of cabbage and tomatoes. Nothing else. They would also take the wood ashes from their fires, their cooking and heating fires, and put it in their gardens. How many of you ever put wood ashes from a fire into your garden? Yeah. This is a very old European and Asian custom. And somehow somebody learned that by putting the wood ashes from your fires into your gardens, it increases the yields and makes the food taste better and so forth. Well, it turns out the wood ashes are the minerals that are left when you burn away the carbon in the wood. So now I had not only an animal model, but a human model. They had a renewable source of minerals in their food. They were on a low carbohydrate diet. To me, it seemed it explained why they lived to be a ripe old age and were very productive. It doesn't seem to matter what you eat, as long as you keep the carbohydrates down and the vitamins and minerals up. That seems to be the thread, the common thread between all 100-year-olds. I'll show you an example. This gal here, Dora Ramathebe from South Africa, was born in 1881, and in 1995 she turned 114. And when she was asked, Dora, what do you attribute your health and longevity to? She said, oh, I ate locusts, the grasshoppers. You know about grasshoppers here, right? Pumpkin seeds, tortoise meat, wild herbs, dry fruit, and a cup of coffee. You notice it doesn't say bread. Notice it doesn't say potatoes. It doesn't say rice. It doesn't say corn. The only carbohydrate might be a little bit of that dried fruit. She got her protein from the locust, from the grasshoppers, and the tortoise meat. She got her essential fatty acids from the pumpkin seeds. And if she ate the herbs grain, she got a little bit of vitamin C and folic acid and beta-carotene. And she lived to be 114. She probably lived longer than that. I didn't keep track of her after that birthday announcement. February 15th, 2003, this gal here, Maddie Owens, 119, and she grew up in South Carolina. And apparently, in 1883, Owens told her family of her hard work in the cotton fields. I guarantee you she didn't have vaccinations. I guarantee you that she didn't have antibiotics. I guarantee you she didn't have 3 good square meals a day. But I'll bet you, because I spent a lot of time in Africa, 2 years in Africa, and I know what they did with their wood ashes from their cooking fires. They always put it in their gardens, even in Africa, for their cabbage and their tomatoes and beans and so forth. So I bet that her parents put the wood ashes from their cooking fires into the gardens. And one of my favorite birthday announcements goes back to 1995. This was a birthday announcement for Jean Calment from France. And she was documented by the Guinness World Book of Records being the oldest living woman at the time. There was more than 200 women who claimed to be older than she. They didn't have the paperwork to prove it. Jean Calment had the paperwork to prove, to the satisfaction of the Guinness World Book of Records, that February 21st, 1995, she was in fact 120. February 21st, 1996, she turned 121. February 21st, 1997, she turned 122. And she died in August of 1997 at age 122 years and 164 days. She died suddenly of a stroke. She was up cooking her eggs and singing Farah Jacques. Farah Jacques, Farah Jacques. Fell over dead. Didn't have Alzheimer's disease. She was bright and mentally alert until the moment she died. She didn't have cardiovascular disease. She didn't have diabetes. She didn't have cancer. She did have rheumatoid arthritis in her hands. You can see that's pretty good. Lived to be 122 and a half. Die suddenly without being mentally infirm. I mean, that's the way to do it, right? The last one I'm going to share with you tells a lot of stories. It's one of my favorite obituaries. It's about an Iranian woman by the name of Mazumi Dusti, and this was published in the Rocky Mountain News Wire Service out of Denver, Colorado in January of 1995. It said Mazumi Dusti died at age 161. Now, this seems pretty outrageous, but you have to give a lot of credibility to this obituary because she was survived by 6 living children ranging in age from 120 to 128. They hadn't even left home to go to college yet. I thought this was a very profound observation by her oldest son, Golam. Her oldest son said his mother had never visited a doctor, never taken any prescription medications or over-the-counter medications. She only used herbs during her life. Now, do you think she had access to vaccinations when she was a child? Did any of her kids get vaccinated? No, they were born up in a little rock hut up in the mountains of a village, Kalatin Bala, in Khorasan province in Iran. Okay, and I guarantee you she was functional till very close to her death because they don't have nursing homes. And they're not just going to find some way to give her IVs and keep her alive. They're in that rock hut. And so she had to be still able to snap beans and skin carrots and cook and sing lullabies to great-great-great-great-grandkids. We all have the genetic capacity to live well beyond 100. Experts in longevity, experts in gerontology and genetics tell us we all, every one of us, each and every one of us in this room has the ability to live well beyond 100. And the only reason why we don't, the shortest way to say it, is because we do too much of the bad stuff and not enough of the good stuff. That's the most succinct way I can say it. We all have the genetic capability to do it.
Okay, not keep it nice and short there. The key here.
Well, let me kind of jump in, and I want to jump in and ask a few things first. After listening to that, I studied out when they started changing the diet all the way from 1930s. I was watching a reel from San Francisco, I'm getting feedback.
Really?
The one thing that the reels had in common is there was no obese people. 1900s San Francisco, 1900s New York. There were no obese people anywhere.
Right.
How come I'm getting feedback through? I can hear myself through your speaker. I think, sorry, Jim.
I'm keeping myself muted while you're talking, just so hopefully it'll cut down.
Well, anyway, I started researching out the type of foods that people, they said, okay, you need 3 squares a day. Then we came out with the TV dinners in the 60s, and it just seemed like we were eating things that were killing us and making us sick. So I understand that, and I've looked at a variety of things to change my diet or to eat better. Obviously, I'm not very successful at it, but this has given me some insight that I didn't know about, to be honest. So go ahead, Jim. Do you prefer Jim or Sarge?
Either one's fine. I'll just don't call me late. Yeah. So the bottom line here is, it's a historic fact that for, most people, your ancestors years and years and years and years ago, thousands of years ago, were meat eaters for the most part. They were, hunters and, killing things. And, if you were lucky, they had fire so they could cook it. But the big thing is the nutrition that goes along with it. Because regardless of how you eat or what you eat, if you don't have that nutrition on top of it, you're going to develop any one of 900 plus chronic health issues, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and those kind of things. What the carnivore diet does is it eliminates probably 95% of the things that are causing inflammation, oxidative damage, and those kind of things that are basically the root causes of so many different health issues. One of the most common things that we've seen when someone gets on the carnivore diet, within 90 days, normally, if they were a type 2 diabetic, they will be a former diabetic, because the processed grains are one of the worst things you could possibly consume. You're better off eating raw sugar than you are white bread. There's a saying out there, the whiter the bread, the quicker you're dead. And it's very, very true. This stuff has virtually no value to it whatsoever. It plugs up your system, your cardiovascular system. It causes all kinds of issues and is just bad news. Not to mention the fact that it will convert to more glycemic issues for your body. It'll cause more sugar problems than a tablespoon of sugar. It's amazing how that works. Maybe my numbers might be off a little bit. I'm going from memory from another friend of mine who's a naturopathic physician who was discussing that. But raw, white bread is bad news. And any grains, whether if they're a starchy carbohydrate, they convert to sugar in your body. So when you cut those things out, you are immediately dropping your sugar hit on your body. One of the things that Wallach has found from his research, and this is from U.S. government statistics, at the turn of the last century, the average American ate half a pound of sugar a year. Today, the average American eats half a pound of sugar a day.
Right.
And therein lies a major part of the problem. And this is why we're seeing what used to be known as adult onset or type 2 diabetes. We're seeing that now in 8, 10, 12-year-olds, because they eat so much processed food, so much sugar, that their body just can't handle it. And getting away from all that stuff, the bottom line is, whatever the government and the American Murder Association tells you to do for food, do exactly the opposite, and you'll have a much better chance of living.
I'm chuckling because I did research on it, and I understand. I get it. What we were taught to eat is killing us.
Oh yeah. I have I did a show, my show a couple of weeks ago, where I covered the so-called food pyramid and just tore it apart. And this is coming from USDA, and what the heck is the Department of Agriculture? What do they know about what your body should be getting food wise? And the thing is Dr. Wallach started out as a large animal vet. He was a large animal. He was over in Africa saving the rhinos and darting elephants and stuff like that before Marlon Perkins, who he worked with, the guy that was the curator of the St. Louis Zoo and from Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, called him back to the States in the early to mid 60s to conduct the research that ultimately became his 1,000-page book that's in the Smithsonian Institute now. And what he found out, and this is where the idea of the 90 essential nutrients came from, he would find animals in the wild with type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure and all that kind of stuff because they weren't finding the things that they needed to stay healthy either, which is why in captivity they have the pelletized food that has, it's a perfect diet that has everything, and they've eliminated all those problems in animals, especially in animal husbandry and farming and that kind of thing, because we don't have insurance for animals until recently. But that's a big thing. If it wasn't for giving the right stuff in the food that the animals eat, and if we had to pay for insurance for animals, your ground chuck would cost you $450 a pound. A dozen eggs would be $100 and that kind of thing. We couldn't afford it. But by giving the animals the things that they need so they can stay healthy, that keeps the vet from having to come out. It keeps food, at least again until recently, reasonable so that people can afford to eat it every day. Now, Joe Biden's taking care of that problem, but before him,
another nightmare we won't get into.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm on that one.
Yeah, but basically the key here is, eating stuff that's not going to upset your body. And part of that, a big thing is oils, plant oils. And this is something that started out, after the 1900s, the early 1900s. Prior to that, people were using all animal products, butter, lard, suet, tallow, that kind of stuff. And in the early 1900s, around 1910, 1915, oddly enough, what we now know as Crisco was purchased by Procter and Gamble. They bought it from a company in Germany who had developed that stuff as a smokeless lubricant for diesel engines and German submarines. That's where Crisco comes from. And they wanted to first make soap with it, but everybody was using lard and, rendered animal fat and that kind of stuff. So that didn't work. And they had this brilliant idea, let's make food out of it. And they paid $1.7 million to the American Heart Association to engage in a disinformation campaign to badmouth animal fats and promote Crisco, which is, hydrogenated vegetables, oils. And that's when heart disease came on the scene. Prior to that, heart disease was not a problem. But the American Heart Association got a double whammy for it. They made some money, and they also basically set themselves up so they could claim to be doing research to get rid of heart disease when they're the ones that actually helped create it. And
I want to let me just kind of jump in there because you're hitting on the subject that's what people don't understand, and I didn't either, is money talk. So if I can produce a product that's bad for people, but I can get it on the market, as long as there's money involved in it, okay, it's fine. So when we're talking about herbs and things, that a lot of good products that the multi-level marketers put out there, they had to go through the screening process in order to be accepted, and or they have not been approved. And so I'm sitting here going, this is like it's almost like the pharmaceutical industry has completely eviscerated what's good for the body, and they control everything. I don't think people realize how big the pharmaceutical industry is. It's the number one industry in the world. But it's telling us that these products that you can now are good for us. They're synthesized petrochemical, and the side effects are everything that the body rejects. So when you see a commercial that has some name you can't pronounce, and it's got side effects as long as my sleeve, that's what the body's rejecting, and people don't understand this. And I learned it because I started going back and learning about the pharmaceutical industry and how completely dominated it and shut down natural medicine and herbal medicine of any kind. And I go, we got to understand that what they're telling us is because somebody paid money in order for that to be promoted. This is essentially what you're saying. I didn't want to say that, but I really want to get that out there because I'm suffering from some of these things. And I know why. I just didn't know what to do. I've been doing all these other things trying to figure out how to get healthy. I'm not that guy who's going to go to Planet Fitness and spend 7 days a week, beating my legs up and tearing my knees apart and damn near dying because I'm on a treadmill. I'm not that guy. So I'm trying to figure out, Lord, what do I need to put into my body? I've got into neutral. Well, I take this product called Protan, which I've been doing for 3 years. But it's a wonderful thing, but I'm still eating all the crap.
Yeah, I make my analogy is if you, and that's one of the things we do with longevity products and the nutrition. When I work with someone, the first thing I do is I give them a list of the 12 bad foods, and that's on my website. Basically, in a nutshell, wheat, barley, rye, oats, corn, and soy are the first 6. Then fried foods, oils in a bottle, well done meats. And that's the thing. It's not red meat. It's how it's cooked. And this comes from a Harvard Nurses Health Study. It was looked at 90,000 nurses over a period of 20 years, from the 60s to the 80s, if I remember right. And what they found was the nurses that ate their meat cooked well done had 462% more cancer than the nurses that ate their meat rare, medium rare, that kind of thing. So if it's pink inside, you avoid the grill marks, you're golden. That's perfectly good for you. Meat is very dense as far as nutrients. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You just ruined my life. I'm getting messages, comments that were echoing on the live stream. I need to try to figure out why that's happening.
Yeah, that's weird.
It says that I'm echoing. One of my friends and my wife even are telling me that I'm echoing. Carol, I don't know what to do if you're listening. Hang on a second, we're going to fix it.
It sounds good on my end. I'm not hearing anything like that. And
well, I do hear an echo. And
well, the good news is I'm also recording this, so if your audio doesn't come out right, I can send you what I've got, and you can maybe patch it into your video.
Yeah, I can hear myself whenever I say anything. I don't know why this is happening.
Strange.
Does that make a difference? Nope. Carol, you have any suggestions?
The one thing I can recommend is using headphones. If you've just got a speaker in your studio, the microphone and the speaker a lot of times will pick that stuff up and cause issues.
Well, I'm going to, Carol, you're going to pull me off the screen. I'm going to get up for a second.
And I'll just go ahead and ramble on until you get back. How's that sound? So, and this is the thing that I get from, like I said, there are a lot of people out there. If you go on like YouTube, you'll find a lot of people out there. There's a guy named Dr. Ken Berry, who I really, really like. I respect him quite a bit, but he is an MD. And you have to remember that medical doctors have absolutely no nutritional training. So when he sits there and says that you can get everything you need just by eating the meats and stuff from animals, he's dead wrong. And he's doing a huge disservice to his listeners. He's got a big following. Most of the stuff he says is pretty accurate, but when it comes to the nutritional stuff, he is dead wrong. And there's a lot of others that say the same. And of course, it's not just the carnivore people. It's whatever plan you pick. They all seem to have that same misconception. And this is why I call this the Nutrivore program, because the best of both worlds happens when you put nutrition, the 90 essential nutrients in there, and switch over to a high fat, medium protein diet with as low a level of carbs as you can help. You know, there's some people, they call it ketovore, where it's the ketogenic diet and the carnivore diet mixed, where they eat some fruits and vegetables. The key is, if you do that, to avoid the ones that have a lot of sugar in them. You know, stick with the non-starchy carbohydrates like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, things like that. Avoid the potatoes, the rice, and that kind of thing if you can. But the ideal thing, if you can do it, and it takes retraining. You know, people are in the habit of eating all that kind of stuff. And I've been doing this since October of last year, and I do not miss vegetables and fruits at all. Every once in a blue moon, I may have a grape or a berry or something, but very seldom. And when I'm at home, it's pretty much strictly animal products. If I happen to go out to a restaurant, I might have a cheat day, just because it's kind of hard to stick with just animal products in restaurants. It can be done, but it's not super easy. But the big thing is to get to the point where we're doing things the same way the most long-lived societies on the planet do. And those areas, the Hunzas and the people up in the high Andes mountains and things like that, Azerbaijan, the Caucasus Mountains, they have 40 times the 100-year-olds that we have. That should say something. And they're all doing this nutrivore diet, where they're getting high mineral content and they're eating high fat, high protein, and virtually no carbohydrates. And when they do that, they're getting back to where they have a really, really good nutritional program going on, where obviously, as we've heard, they have virtually no disease and they do great. And the one thing that Wallach does in his research is he looks for, people that live to be 100. And until recently, we hadn't found a single vegetarian or vegan that lived to be 100. There are a few out there, but they are few and far between. And
can you guys, let me jump in. Can you hear me any better?
You sound good to me. Is the feedback gone?
Yeah, the feedback's gone, but the last time I wore these, we had a real bad popping sound.
Huh.
So let me see if I can't get this away.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've seen. Usually if you have an open speaker and a microphone, that's where you get a lot of your feedback. If you cut that out and use headsets, you should be good.
Let me ask my wife, babe, is that better? She's in the chat here. Oh, she said I'm good. Okay, so I do apologize for that. I was looking for a different set of headphones, but they're not here in my office. So anyway, thank you for carrying the show for a minute there.
Well, no problem.
I'm really curious about this, because when Carol started telling me that he only ate meat and eggs, he only ate once a day, and that he lost his weight, he's all kinds of things in his body have stabilized.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, yeah, okay. It's just hard for me to take in.
Oh yeah, it's different. It's definitely
different. He mentioned you, and I said, well, maybe we should have that person on the show, because I'm at a loss. I lost a bunch of weight. I started eating just fish, and then I found it all. But I got other issues that I need to deal with, and it sounds like this is something I need to try.
Oh yeah. I would be more than happy to sit down with you and discuss a nutritional protocol. The longevity products literally are the best thing I've ever seen. And I work with a guy named Dr. Peter Glidden. He's a naturopath with about 35 years of clinical experience. He used to be a rep for one of the top nutraceutical companies that only sold to doctors. And the longevity products blow those things out of the water. He says this is the best stuff he's ever used. And basically any chronic health issue, up to and including cancer, will go away if you put the nutrients back that are missing that caused the problem in the first place. I know people that had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, were told by their doctors to go home, get their affairs in order because they had less than 3 months to live. They got a hold of Dr. Wallach, got on his protocols, and they're alive years later, many times after the doctors who said they were going to die had already died in front of them. Um,
I lost a brother to pancreatic cancer, and also I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor.
Ooh.
I had squamous cell carcinoma in the throat.
Oh, okay.
But I have never really been the healthy person that I could be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that discipline. But to be honest, and
Thank
I'm
you,
going to be
doctor, for
real
it.
honest, my wife is listening to me now, so she hears me talk about, my biggest fear is just dropping dead of a heart attack. I don't want to go out that way, but
Oh, no.
I'm sitting here going, I'm 64 years old. I think I'll be 65, and is it 65? Yeah, 65. And I need to get this gone and get control of this. And so the reason why I didn't want to research you out is because I didn't want to see all the negative stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because I look at both.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have a fresh perspective. And Carol is living proof.
He sure is.
The Carnivore he was really pretty big.
Yeah.
And he's not now. I thought
when I saw 70 or 80 pounds, if I remember right.
I contacted him. I hadn't talked to him for probably a year or so. And when I saw him, I was thinking, my God, are you sick? You got cancer? Because he lost so much weight. I didn't recognize him for as thin as he is. And he says, well, I'm doing the carnivore diet.
Mm-hmm.
And that
makes a big difference. I had crept up a little bit. I was a little over 200 pounds the beginning of last year. And I had gotten it back down a smidge. I was at 195 when I started Carnivore in October, and doing no exercise at all, basically, other than basic walking around and doing little things, going out and taking care of my horses and whatnot. I am now, this morning, I was on the scale at 178. So I've lost that much more, and I'm, 3 pounds from where I was when I retired 28 years ago. So I got a few more pounds to go, but it's, I'm getting there. And
my wife just said, I'll do it with you. I love meat.
There you go. I wish I could get my wife to do that. Go ahead.
I got a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A lot of the meat that we're eating, that we're getting out of the shelf that says Safeway or whatever on it, it's full of hormones and all kinds of stuff. Even the blood that we're looking at isn't blood. It's some kind of chemical to make it look attractive. Address those things for me if you can.
Yeah. Obviously you want to get the best meat that you possibly can. The thing is, a couple of things. If you were doing the nutrition along with it, a big part of the problem is the body's ability to take out the trash. Okay. Yeah. And what we have found, and this is something Dr. Glidden found, he used to do, he was the first naturopath that he knew of that did EDTA chelation to get heavy metals out of people's systems. And when he started working with Dr. Wallach and longevity, he decided he was going to put his new patients on a 90-day protocol of just the nutrients. And he would do a test first to check their heavy metals, put them on 90 days of nothing but nutrients correct for their body weight, and then retest them at the end of that 90-day period, see if they needed to do chelation. And in virtually every case, the heavy metals were gone. What the thing is when your body doesn't have the materials it needs to carry on proper healthy functions, it can't get rid of the fat, the crap that's coming in from the crap in the food, crap in the water, crap in the air, and it stores it in fat. And then you keep building more fat and more fat and more fat to hide all that garbage that you're sucking in. When your body gets nutrified, it now has what it needs to get rid of that stuff. So it will start burning off that fat and eliminating those toxins, and then you will be able to lose weight, and the things that you're getting from those foods will not be as dangerous because the body now has what it needs to get rid of them. Now, of course, like I said, you want to get the best meat. If you can find a local organic farmer who is growing grass-fed, grass-finished beef without using hormones, pesticides, and that kind of junk, that's what you want. You're going to pay more for it, but how much is your health worth?
Beef has become a When I pay my mortgage, I think I'm buying a steak these days.
I'm telling you what, when you buy a steak, you think you're paying your mortgage.
Exactly. It's
And the sad
ridiculous.
thing is, what I have found is pork is much more reasonable. And since you mentioned at the beginning of the show, you don't eat pork, um, that's a shame. Because I'm finding, at least in my area, I can get pork chops really decent price still. But again, it depends on where you're at and who you're dealing with and that kind of thing. But even if you have to buy grocery store meat, the fact that you're not taking in all those extra things, because the big place where you're getting the glyphosate, you're getting all the chemicals and toxins, most of that is coming in from all the processed foods, the grains and everything else, and eating at fast food places. Even the ones that claim to be, like Chipotle claims to be really, really good, all organic, they've been tested for glyphosate and things, and they test way up there with everybody else. So it's a shame that, you can't, it's almost impossible to get good stuff out. So I eat most of my meals at home.
Well, if you're only eating once a day, if you can get to where you're only eating once a day,
Save a lot
then
of
that
money.
eliminates 80% of that issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, I
Yeah,
mean, what do you do in the morning when you wake up? I mean, do you drink coffee?
I drink coffee. I have a special type of coffee that I've been drinking for a number of years. It's called Gano Excel. It's a powder, or an instant that comes in little packets, and it's actually made with a naturally virtually no caffeine Brazilian organic coffee, and it has organic germane. It's made with reishi mushrooms, believe it or not.
Well, yeah, I was waiting for you to say mushrooms.
Yeah, and they are detoxifying, and Ganoderma means beautiful skin. And it does help clear up things. It helps detoxify your body, and it has organic germanium in place of the caffeine, which gives you the same kind of boost, but not that nasty drop. And I've been using that for years. I've got a link on my website under the links tab for anybody that's interested. But it's what I use every day. I drink them
I
one
was
cup of that.
I was just looking at another product where they have several different types of mushrooms in it. I kind of looked at it and I went, okay, I'm going to pull back from this. Number one, to do all of this is just cost.
Yeah,
Your costs go through the roof. But I understand I'd rather spend a little bit more to put better stuff in my body than sit in a hospital bed for 3 months
exactly.
getting pumped up with everything while I'm dying.
Especially
Uh,
now, because you go in a hospital, that's almost a death sentence all by itself.
it really is. I'm not a person. The medical industry to me is so far away from uh, healing people.
Oh yeah, it's more
It's
like
called
killing
managed
people.
care.
Yeah.
I had a doctor tell me, says, well, I make most of my money on prescriptions. And I mean, I went, whoa, give me a break.
Yeah,
That's the point. That's crazy.
I just put a meme on my Facebook page the other day that I made up. It says, you restore health with nutrition, not a prescription pad.
Right.
And
Right.
prescription drugs, they're nothing. If you might as well go down to your garage and get some oil and drink it, because that's what 99% of pharmaceuticals are, is
Thank you for
petroleum.
saying that. When I did the research on this and I started looking at petrochemicals and how they had synthesized medicine right around the 1930s with the Rockefeller and all the stuff that
Oh
he
yeah.
brought in, the
Mm-hmm.
American Cancer Society, the American Medical Association, I'm going, these are organizations that have moved us away from being healthy.
Yeah. And
I mean,
that's one.
really, they really truly have. And then the pharmaceutical, I can't sit and watch my television for 20 minutes without a pharmaceutical commercial coming on.
Right.
And then
Exactly.
I sit and listen to the side effects because I
Mhm.
know that that's the part of the drug that your body is going to fight.
And
So
they all have them.
your immune system is moving away from doing what it's supposed to do to fight this invading medicine that
Yep.
this doctor told you to go ahead and buy.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I have to apologize to the audience. The sound thing, I don't know what happened. It's the first time that's happened, but I had to step away for a minute. I really do appreciate the fact that we did this tonight because I'm encouraged. Personally, I'm encouraged. And to see my wife here, she's actually listening. Uh, and I've been married to a meat eater for 33 years. So this is encouraging for both of us
I'll tell you
to
what,
do this. Carol, I appreciate that we are doing this show. Now, I would like to learn a little bit more about all of this stuff. I'll just have to go to your website. Well, now that
you
I
can go
know
to my
you,
website, and I put it in the chat room there. Your YOUR DIY, like do it yourself health, HEALTH, yourdiyhealth.com. And I've got some other interesting technologies there at the top of the homepage. I've got links, and I've got the whole shooting match. And anybody who's interested in doing a nutritional protocol, I'll warn you up front, the products are not cheap, but they are the best you will ever find anywhere. And we get results. You know, anybody that follows a protocol I set up for them, they do get results. And the human factor is the one variable. I can't guarantee anything because I can't make you do what you got to do. I've had people that bought the stuff and 6 months later it's still sitting in their kitchen and haven't even opened the box. But the stuff works, and because it's the right form, it's what your body's designed to use, and you plug that in with the carnivore diet, and you've literally got the best of both worlds. And people are living, you know, like I said, 130, 40, 50 years and doing this kind of thing. And I'll tell you what, we could go for hours.
Yeah, no, I'm just listening to my wife saying I'm echoing again. So I really don't know what's going on here. But anyway, can we do another show?
Anytime you want, I'm happy to. Yeah,
and I'll
definitely
contact you after the show for more information.
Sure.
I really do appreciate you taking the time. I want to give you the last word before we close out.
Yeah, my thing is, no matter what you're doing food wise, you need the 90 essential nutrients on top of it, because that's the only way to truly be healthy, to get your body what it needs so that it can stop being hungry all the time and help you lose weight, get healthy, and live a much better life. That's the key thing. Don't believe it when anybody says you can get everything you need from eating your 4 main food groups or this, that, or whatever. It's a lie. You cannot do it. It's impossible. You got to supplement.
Well, we've got your website up on the ticker, and I do appreciate you taking the time. It's been very interesting.
I've enjoyed it.
I really have to tell you, I'm encouraged because I'm getting, you get to that age, and you'll understand this, where you go, wow, I'm going to be 70 years old in 15 minutes, and you can't tell young people this. So I really do appreciate you, Jim, taking the time to come on the show. I'd love to have you back on. Certainly, maybe I'll be the next test case and we can do a show 30 days from now or 60 days from now.
There you go.
I'm really, really, really I'm intrigued. I'm kind of dumbfounded. Carol's been after me. He's been after me for about all this. But say that again.
It's like taking a drink from a fire hydrant. You're getting information overload.
Well, we got to have you back on. I really do want to say thank you. My goodness, I really don't know what to say, because I'm like, maybe I found what I need.
That's what I figured out a while back. This stuff is amazing. It's fortuitous. But I appreciate you having me, and I'd be happy to come back anytime.
You're going to buy a sailboat and go around the world?
That's the plan. I'm just waiting for some investments to pay off, and I got a 50-foot catamaran that I'll be jumping on and sailing off into the deep blue sea, single-handed.
So when I was in the Navy, a blue whale came up alongside of our ship.
Oh man!
I went, okay, I'm never swimming in the ocean again.
My goal is to swim with sharks.
No, I don't have those kind of gonads.
Oh man!
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
We'll have you back, okay?
Definitely.
Folks, this is Jeff with Let's Talk About It. We've done a lot of talking tonight. We're going to go ahead and close out the show. Sorry about the technical issues that we had. And I really appreciate that my wife was tuned in, and Mike, staff. There you go, Mike. Time to jump on it. This is Jeff. This will be posted on my website, freefromfear.us. Good night, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.